A girl gave shelter to a man on the street, not knowing he was a millionaire in hiding. Anna didn't believe in heroes. She believed in sore feet, in chipped mugs, in the rhythmic clink of cutlery during the slow hours between commuter rushes. Her world was the smell of burnt coffee and half-hearted tips, not capes and rescues. Yet, on that bitter February evening, beneath the broken street lamp outside her apartment, something shifted. Her hands were still trembling from the rejection email, the third in 2 weeks, when she saw him. A man, motionless on the bench near the stairwell. Wrapped in a coat too thin for the wind. She might have kept walking, should have. But something about him made her pause. The tilt of his head, maybe? Or the way his hands trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper. It was the blood, in the end, that made the decision for her. It crusted beneath a bandage on his ankle, exposed when the hem of his pants rode up. He didn't ask for help. Didn't look at her. But she crossed the threshold anyway, between safety and risk, between solitude and something else. "I have a spare room," she said, barely above a whisper. The man flinched, eyes rising to meet hers. Clear eyes. Watchful. Nothing dull or broken about them. He followed her silently. Inside, she handed him a towel, watched him limp down the narrow hallway, said nothing as he disappeared into the back room. Just for the night, she told herself. Heat, clean bandages, a sandwich. Not charity. Just decency. But as she lay in bed hours later, she listened for the sound of the door opening. It never came. The next morning, he was still there. "I'm Mark," he said. Voice low. Accent clipped, not quite local. "Thanks." She didn't ask questions. Not about the blood. Not about why he was sleeping on a bench in a neighborhood where benches were used more by pigeons than people. Instead, she showed him where she kept the tea, told him to rinse the mug before using it. He stayed 3 nights. On the 4th, he fixed her sink. On the 5th, he rearranged her bookshelves, by genre, then color, then spine size, until she told him to stop. There was a calmness to him. A kind of presence. He moved through her small apartment as if it were a chapel, quiet, reverent, careful not to disturb. "You read a lot," he observed one evening. "Better than talking," she replied. He smiled, and for a second, the exhaustion lifted from his face. Mark made terrible rice. He burned eggs. But he kept trying. She let him. It was easier than acknowledging that she had started looking forward to the sound of him humming tunelessly from the kitchen. Then came the newspaper. It was nothing, a casual glance in line at the corner store. A headline she almost didn't register. "Tech CEO missing after corporate scandal. Is Mark Dalton still alive?" The photo stopped her breath. A face more polished, hair slicked, the tie at a perfect angle. But it was him. Mark. She didn't confront him. Didn't mention it that night as he scraped burnt beans off a pan and offered a sheepish smile. But she couldn't unsee it. The next morning, he was gone. So was the note. Folded neatly on her nightstand. "I didn't plan for you. I didn't plan to be seen, to be cared for. But you did. And because of that, I'm still standing. Thank you for giving me shelter when I had nothing. I promise I'll make it worth it." And just like that, he vanished again. This time by choice. But something had changed. Not in him. In her. The apartment felt emptier than it should have. Anna tried to tell herself it was just the silence, that Mark had been more noise than presence. But it wasn't true. He had filled the space without trying, without asking. Now, it was only her again, the kettle, the uneven hum of the refrigerator, and a stack of resumes that hadn't moved in weeks. The days passed in a blur of double shifts and aching feet. Anna went back to waiting tables with the quiet resolve of someone who no longer expected change, only endurance. Her coworkers noticed she was quieter. Her manager commented once that she looked tired, then offered to cut her hours. She declined. She needed the money. Mark's note stayed on her nightstand. She didn't talk about him. Not even to Mara, her best friend since high school, who would have dissected the entire thing with a forensic level of curiosity. Instead, she folded that chapter and placed it in a corner of her mind marked unopened until the envelope arrived. It came on a Thursday. No return address. Cream-colored, thick paper, the kind that stuck out among bills and pizza flyers. Her name, just Anna, handwritten on the front. Inside, a single sheet of stationery. Printed with the logo of a tech startup she had never heard of, Virion Technologies. Tucked beneath the letter was a business card and a second note, handwritten. We're looking for people with integrity. Your name was recommended. She stared at it for a long time. The official letter was crisp and formal, offering her a position in the company's operations team, starting salary well beyond anything she'd earned before. The note beneath it made her chest ache. It was him. Mark. Or rather, Mark Dalton. She Googled the company. Virion Technologies was barely a year old but already making waves in ethical AI development. No flashy headlines. No scandals. Quietly competent, just like the man who had slept on her couch. She didn't call the number on the card. Not right away. Instead, she folded the envelope, placed it in her coat pocket, and carried it around for 3 days like a secret. When she finally called, the woman on the other end, Rachel, seemed to be expecting her. Anna? She asked. You'll be speaking with the founder. He's free tomorrow at 10. No. Interview? Anna asked, thrown off. This is the interview, Rachel said kindly. But he wants to speak with you himself. The office was in a shared workspace on the edge of the city. Clean lines, glass walls, and the faint scent of new carpet. Anna arrived early. She wore the only blazer she owned, the one she'd bought from a thrift store for a job interview at a florist that had never called her back. Mark was waiting. Clean-shaven. Neatly dressed. But still him. Still the man who had eaten burnt rice in her kitchen and fixed her bookshelf like it mattered. Hi, he said, standing. You came. You left, she replied. I did. He gestured to the chair across from him. Thank you for not throwing the letter away. She sat slowly, eyes narrowing. Why me? Because you didn't ask for anything, he said simply. Because you didn't try to fix me. You just helped. He explained everything then. The betrayal. The partner who had framed him. The lawyers who had advised him to disappear while the dust settled. He had gone off the grid, planning to stay lost until he could prove his innocence. I didn't expect anyone to find me, he said. But you did. Anna listened. She didn't interrupt. Not until he said her name again, this time with a softness that nearly broke her. I cleared my name, he said. Started something new. I want this company to be different. Real. Built on the kind of people who know how to survive when things fall apart. And you think I know how to do that? She asked. I think you've been doing it longer than I ever did. She didn't say yes. Not immediately. She told him she'd think about it. And she did. 4 days. While bussing tables. While walking home past the same bench where he had once sat, barely able to move. When she finally accepted, it wasn't with joy, but with quiet certainty. Because maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The first day at Virion didn't feel like entering a new life. It felt like stepping onto thin ice. Anna arrived 20 minutes early, stood in the lobby for 10, then circled the block twice before walking through the glass doors. No security guards. No swiping of keycards or corporate buzzwords etched into marble. Just a quiet, open space filled with people who looked more like baristas and grad students than tech executives. And yet, the air buzzed with purpose. Rachel greeted her with a warm smile. Glad you made it, she said, handing Anna a sleek-looking badge. Mark wants to introduce you personally. Anna blinked. He's here? He's always here. Just not always visible. The office he led her to was simple. No grand desk or skyline views. Just a modest corner, 2 chairs, and a whiteboard scribbled with equations she didn't pretend to understand. Mark stood when she entered. No tie. No pretense. "I didn't want you to walk in without a face to welcome you," he said. She didn't smile, not quite. "You didn't say goodbye last time. I wasn't sure I deserved one." A beat of silence passed. He handed her a small box. Inside, a simple nameplate, Anna Miller, Operations Associate. "No titles," he added. "No corner offices. You work hard, you grow. No one here was handed anything." She nodded, still trying to reconcile the man who once stitched together a blanket from old towels with the one now handing her a corporate badge. "Your team lead is Carla," Mark continued. "She's tough but fair. You'll be working on internal logistics. No tech. No code. But you'll be building the bones of this place." And just like that, she was in. The work wasn't glamorous. It was inventory counts, supply tracking, managing chaos between departments that communicated more with emojis than actual words. But Anna was good at it. Detail-oriented. Quietly observant. The kind of mind that remembered how many mugs were missing from the break room and who never refilled the coffee filters. By the end of the week, Carla nodded her approval. "You've got the patience of a monk and the memory of a hawk. You'll do fine." Anna didn't respond, but something warmed inside her. She hadn't been praised in years. Mark stayed distant. He didn't hover. He didn't check in. But once, passing her desk late one evening, he paused. "I wasn't wrong about you," he said. "You were barely conscious when you met me." He smiled. "And yet I knew." Their conversation stayed brief, professional. Still, there was something there, unspoken. A kind of knowing. Two people who had seen each other at their lowest, and hadn't looked away. Outside work, Anna's life began to shift. Her apartment still smelled faintly of burnt toast and old books, but now there were folders on the table. Savings goals. Budget spreadsheets. Plans. She took a Saturday class in business administration. Signed up for a small business workshop at the library. Her dream, the flower shop, no longer felt like a joke. One night, as she reorganized her kitchen, her phone buzzed. "Mark, there's a company dinner tomorrow. Optional. But I think you'd enjoy it." She almost declined. Crowds weren't her thing. Suits even less. But something in her hesitated. Curiosity, maybe? Or something closer to fear, the fear of being seen. She replied, "What should I wear?" His response was immediate. "Whatever makes you feel like you belong." She stared at that message for a long time. The next evening, she stood outside the restaurant, a renovated warehouse-turned-bistro that reeked of casual luxury, in a dress she hadn't worn in years. It was simple. Navy blue. Modest neckline. Clean lines. Mark was already inside. Talking to someone? Smiling. But the moment his eyes found her, he paused mid-sentence. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. It was the look. The same one from her doorway that first night. Recognition. Respect. And something softer, hidden beneath it all. He walked over. "I'm glad you came." "I'm not," she admitted. "But I didn't want to wonder what it would have been like if I hadn't." Mark offered his arm. She didn't take it. But she walked beside him. And that, for now, was enough. Anna wasn't used to being noticed. Not the kind of notice that came with admiration, but the subtler kind, when people listened as she spoke, when her suggestions were jotted into notebooks, when her ideas became changes in policy. At Virion, her quiet efficiency had grown into something more. People sought her out. Trusted her. 3 months in, she was promoted. Carla handed her the new badge with a nod. "You earned this." Anna stared at it. Same name, slightly higher title, Project Operations Coordinator. The words meant little, but the recognition, that meant everything. Still, she kept her head down. Focused. She hadn't spoken to Mark outside work since the company dinner. He stayed in the background, a steady presence. Always observing, always quiet. But there were moments, the way he lingered when she spoke in meetings, or how he sometimes walked the long way through the office, past her desk, moments that hinted at something still unspoken between them. Then, out of nowhere, came the headline. She saw it on her lunch break, scrolling absent-mindedly through the news. Federal probe into Axion Technologies expands, Mark Dalton's former business partner under indictment. Her breath caught. Axion? The company Mark had once built. The one he'd lost. The article didn't mention Mark beyond a brief note that he'd been cleared of wrongdoing. But Anna knew this would stir everything again, reporters, investors' suspicion. And she was right. The next day, a man in a tailored suit appeared in the lobby. Not press. Not police. Investor. He introduced himself to Carla, asked polite but pointed questions, and finally turned to Anna. You were with Mark when he disappeared, correct? He asked, tone friendly, words too precise. Anna felt the weight of the room shift. I met him after, she said evenly. When he had nothing. The investor raised a brow. And yet you're here now. In a very different position. Carla stepped in then. That's enough. But Anna's voice cut through. I'm here because I earned it. You want to know who Mark Dalton is? Ask the people who work under him. Not the ones who left when the headlines got messy. The man didn't push. He just smiled, too controlled, and left. But the air in the office shifted. Mark called a company-wide meeting the next morning. I built this company to be different, he said, standing in the same plain room where he'd first welcomed Anna. Not perfect. Just better. We won't always get that right. But I promise you, we'll never go back to what I left behind. He didn't look at her directly. He didn't have to. That night, Anna stayed late, finishing up a logistics plan for a new product launch. Mark walked by as she packed up. You didn't have to defend me, he said. I wasn't, she replied. I was defending what we're building. Mark hesitated at the door. I never told you what really happened, he said quietly. How I ended up on that bench. She looked up. I figured it wasn't a story you were ready to tell. I was betrayed, he said. By someone I trusted more than anyone. He used my name, my systems, to funnel money, and when it all came crashing down, he left the country. I lost everything overnight. I didn't run. I just stopped. Anna watched him, carefully. And when I stopped, he continued, you were the one who picked me up. You didn't even know who I was. You weren't a name to me, she said. You were a man bleeding in the cold. He laughed softly. Still am, in some ways. There was a pause. Not awkward, but weighty. I'm sorry I left the way I did, he said. You left a note, she replied. That's more than most. He smiled, something distant and tired in his eyes. Sometimes, when everything is stripped away, what's left is who you really are. And who is that? She asked quietly. He looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, his voice carried the same rawness she had heard that first night. I don't know yet. But I think you're part of that answer. Then he turned and left. And Anna sat there, alone in the dim light of the office, wondering when exactly her life had stopped being ordinary, and when she had stopped wanting it to be. It started with coffee. Not the shared kind, not the casual kind. Just 2 paper cups left side by side on a stone bench outside the building, just far enough from the office to feel neutral. Anna found them there one morning. Her name written neatly on one lid. She didn't need to guess who had left it. She didn't drink it. But the next day, she brought one in return. Mark's name in her handwriting. She left it in the same place. Nothing else. No messages. A quiet game. One that lasted a week. They didn't speak of it. Inside the walls of Virion, professionalism reigned. But something had shifted, something small and persistent. Like a draft from a window she hadn't realized was open. Then, late one Friday, he asked if she'd walk. No pretense. Just a simple question in the elevator as she gathered her things. She hesitated. Then nodded. They walked in silence at first, past the storefronts closing for the night, the hum of evening settling into the city. The breeze had a sharpness to it, early signs of the coming fall. Sometimes I walk these streets to remind myself, he said after a while. Of what? Where I was. Who I was. Anna glanced at him. You were on a bench. I was trying to disappear. He corrected. Trying to convince myself I didn't matter anymore. You mattered, she said quietly. Even then. He stopped walking. Turned to face her. Why did you help me? I don't know, she said. Maybe because no one helped me when I needed it. Mark's eyes didn't leave hers. Do you regret it? No, she said. But sometimes I don't understand it. Neither do I, he admitted. But I think about it every day. They stood there for a moment, between streetlights and shadows. Do you ever miss who you were before all this? She asked. He took a breath. I miss the simplicity of not being known. But I don't miss the man who let ambition blind him. And now? Now I try to see clearly. I try to choose better. She nodded. They turned back, walking toward the train station, the silence between them less empty now. It was filled with shared things, not memories, not yet, but understanding. That night, Anna lay in bed thinking not about the company or her goals, but about what it meant to see someone so completely and still choose to stay. At work, things grew busier. A new product was launching. Pressure mounted. Mark disappeared into meetings. Investors buzzed around the office like flies. But Anna remained steady, guiding her team through the chaos. Carla pulled her aside one afternoon. You're not just surviving anymore, she said. You're leading. Anna didn't know how to respond. One evening, Rachel invited her out for drinks, a casual team thing, she said. Anna went, half out of obligation. But as she nursed a beer at the corner table, Rachel leaned in. You've changed him, you know. Anna blinked. Who? Mark. She didn't reply. Rachel smiled knowingly. He's still guarded. Still avoids certain conversations. But since you came, he listens more. Stays grounded. I didn't do anything. Exactly, Rachel said. You just showed up. That's sometimes all it takes. Anna left early, uncomfortable with the weight of being seen. But the words stayed with her. Later that week, she found another note on her desk. Folded, no name. You asked me once who I am now. I'm someone who still doesn't have the full answer. But when I think of the future, the kind of company, the kind of man I want to be, you're always somewhere in that picture. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. She didn't respond. Not in words. But the next morning, there were 2 cups of coffee again. And this time, she took a sip. Thin lines were being drawn. Not confessions. Not promises. But something like trust. And trust, Anna had learned, was how real beginnings always started. It was nearing winter again, and the city had started to darken earlier, street lamps flickering on by late afternoon. Anna liked this time of year. There was a kind of hush that settled over everything, a permission to retreat, to reflect. At Virion, things were not quiet. The new product launch had exceeded expectations. Orders were coming in faster than the operations team could keep up. Anna worked long hours, not because she had to, but because she cared. The systems she'd built were holding, but only just. One evening, Mark called her into his office. You look exhausted, he said. She didn't argue. Her reflection had confirmed the same thing that morning. You need a break, he continued. Take next week. Go somewhere. I can't. The logistics are covered, he said. I've already spoken with Carla. Anna hesitated. Why? He leaned back in his chair. Because you've been carrying more than your share. Because you haven't had space to breathe since the day you started here. And because if you burn out, we lose more than just a good employee. She didn't thank him. Didn't smile. But she took the offer. She didn't travel far, just a few towns over, to a quiet cabin she found on a rental site. No Wi-Fi. A single fireplace. A small porch that overlooked a frozen lake. It was the first time in years she'd been truly alone. No noise. No shift schedules. No one needing anything from her. She brought books, but didn't read them. Brought her laptop, but didn't open it. Instead, she walked. Slept. Let her mind settle. And thought of him. Not Mark the CEO. Not Mark Dalton, the name once splashed across headlines. But the man who had once washed dishes in her kitchen, who'd made a mess of her bookshelf and tried to cook rice with cinnamon. She hadn't let herself think of that version of him in months. But he was still there, beneath the polished surface, beneath the steady voice in boardrooms. The man who had once asked for nothing, and slowly begun to rebuild everything. On the third night, her phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. Back from the dead yet? Mark's pretending he's not pacing around here like a dog waiting at the door. Anna laughed for the first time in days. She typed back, "Tell him I'm fine. Not frozen in a snowbank." The next morning, a delivery truck arrived at the cabin. She almost didn't answer the knock. On the porch, a box. Inside, her favorite tea. A book she'd mentioned once in passing. A small note, folded and unassuming. "Thought you might be better company for yourself if you had something warm to drink. Come back when you're ready, not when you feel guilty." She stared at the handwriting for a long time. It was neat. Unfussy. Familiar. She made the tea. Read the first 2 chapters of the book. Sat in silence and let herself feel something she hadn't in years. Cared for. It scared her more than she expected. Back at the office a week later, she found a quiet shift in the way people looked at her. There was respect now, not just for her work, but for her presence. The new recruits deferred to her. Carla started calling her the glue. Mark stayed distant, but never far. They crossed paths in the kitchen late one night. She was rinsing a mug. He was filling the kettle. "You came back," he said quietly. "I wasn't planning to stay gone." He nodded. "You looked rested." "More than I expected," she admitted. There was a pause. Then he said, "The cabin, I used to go there years ago. When I needed to disappear." She looked at him. "You've never told me that. There's a lot I haven't told you." Anna dried the mug, set it down. "Then tell me," she said. And he did. They sat on the windowsill, the office empty around them, and Mark spoke. Of the day the board turned on him. Of the friend who sold him out. Of the press vultures. Of the night he walked for hours before ending up on her bench, ankle torn open from a fall on the tracks, pride more broken than his body. "I wasn't thinking clearly," he said. "I wasn't even trying to survive. I was just done. And then I found you," she said softly. "No," he corrected. "You saw me." There was silence again. This time, Anna broke it. "You said once that you think about the future, and I'm in that picture. But you never said how." Mark turned his head. Looked at her fully. "I don't know," he said. "Not yet. I just know you're the one thing that feels real when everything else feels performative." She didn't respond right away. Because she understood. Because she wasn't ready either. But she didn't move away. That mattered more than words. Later, walking home, Anna felt the cold bite into her coat. But inside, something was beginning to thaw. Not romance. Not a fairy tale. Just the possibility of something neither of them had dared believe in before. Trust. Not the blind kind. The earned kind. The kind that grows slowly, in silence, in shared burdens, in seeing someone as they are and choosing to stay anyway. The calendar crept toward winter's edge, and with it came whispers, an industry conference, a panel invitation, a press mention. Anna had never been one for public attention, but her name now circulated in the small orbit of Virion's growth. "Operations doesn't usually get the spotlight," Carla joked one day, handing Anna a media brief that listed her as a key architect behind Virion's structural integrity. But apparently someone noticed. Anna skimmed the article. Her name was there, understated but present. It felt strange. Like reading about someone else. Then came the call from a journalist. The tone was friendly. Too friendly. "I'm doing a piece on post-scandal redemption arcs in tech," the woman said. "Mark Dalton's journey is compelling, but the human angle? That's where you come in." Anna's chest tightened. "I'm not interested," she said. "You're a part of the story now," the voice replied. "People will want to know who helped rebuild him." That night, she couldn't sleep. Not because of the article, though that haunted her, but because of what it meant. She hadn't realized how visible she'd become. And visibility came with questions. Probing. Speculation. Misinterpretation. At work, Mark seemed to feel the shift too. His interactions with her grew more guarded again, not out of coldness, but self-protection. Like he sensed the story starting to slip beyond their control. She confronted him one afternoon in the stairwell, the only place in the building where people rarely wandered. "She called me," Anna said. He knew instantly who she meant. "I didn't give her your name. She found it anyway." Mark looked away. "She'll publish what she wants." "I know," Anna said. "But you're not the only one with something to lose now." The words hung between them. She saw it then, the old guilt in his eyes. The kind that doesn't go away with time or success. The kind that lingers even when you've done everything right since. "Why do you still carry it?" she asked. "You didn't do what they said. You rebuilt." He looked at her, quiet for a long moment. "Because I let it happen," he said finally. "I saw the cracks and ignored them. I thought loyalty would protect me. It didn't." Anna understood. She'd done the same in her own life, ignored warning signs, clung to jobs, to relationships, to habits that drained her. They were both people who stayed too long in the wrong places. After the article published, it made fewer waves than expected. A few blog reposts. A few internal Slack messages from coworkers who congratulated her with thumbs-up emojis and GIF reactions. No scandal. Just a mild ripple. But it changed something. People began looking at her differently. Not just as the competent one, but as someone tethered to the company's origin myth. Mark kept his distance again. Not unkindly, just cautious. She understood it, even as it left her with an ache she didn't quite know how to name. She buried herself in work. Until one afternoon, Carla found her in the supply room, counting shipments alone. "This isn't about inventory," Carla said flatly. Anna didn't respond. Carla leaned against the doorway. "You know, it's okay to care about someone and still be mad at how much it costs." "I'm not mad." "Then you're lying to yourself." Anna let the box cutter rest on the shelf. "I didn't ask to be part of his story." "No," Carla agreed. "But maybe he's part of yours. Doesn't mean you owe him the ending." That night, Anna went home and sat at her kitchen table. She pulled out the old note, the one he'd left when he disappeared. "I didn't plan for you. I didn't plan to be seen." She realized now, he hadn't just meant the night on the bench. He'd meant everything that followed. He'd meant her presence, her belief, her refusal to abandon him even when he had all but vanished. And she? She hadn't planned for him either. But here they were. She found him the next day. Not in the office, but outside, sitting on the same bench where they used to leave coffee for each other, the wind tugging at his coat. He looked up when she approached. Said nothing. "I don't want to be the footnote in your comeback story," she said. "I don't want you to be. I want to be something real," she said. "Or nothing at all." He nodded. "So do I." There was no resolution in that moment. No kiss. No promises. Just two people sitting side by side, both of them a little bruised by the world, both of them learning to trust what didn't need to be spoken. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. They didn't define what they were. Not then. Not in the weeks that followed. Anna returned to work as she always had, early, focused, calm beneath pressure. Mark did the same. But now, their conversations had texture. "Wait," There were more silences, too, not avoidance, but familiarity. The kind that no longer needed filling. One Thursday morning, a power outage shut down the building. The generator flickered half-heartedly, plunging the office into twilight. Everyone was told to leave for the day. Anna didn't. She stayed at her desk, sorting paper records by flashlight. Mark found her an hour later, 2 takeaway coffees in hand. You could have gone home. So could you. They ended up in the break room, sitting on opposite sides of the old wooden table, steam curling from their cups. I used to be afraid of stillness, Mark said after a while. It made me feel useless. Anna traced the edge of her cup. I used to confuse stillness with failure. And now? She shrugged. Now it feels like air I can finally breathe. Mark smiled at that, tired but genuine. That afternoon, with the office hushed and half empty, they shared stories. Small ones? The kind that don't usually surface in the rush of work. Anna told him about her mother, the way she used to bring home flowers after hard days, saying, "Even wilting things deserve a moment of beauty." Mark told her about his older brother, who taught him how to code on a hand-me-down laptop. He was better at it than I ever was, Mark admitted. But he got tired of the grind. Moved to a farm in Oregon. Sends me pictures of goats now. They laughed. They didn't touch. But something inside her shifted, a quiet affirmation that connection doesn't always have to roar. Sometimes it hums. The next day, the lights came back on. The world resumed. But something stayed different. One evening, Anna walked into her apartment and found the note. No envelope. Just a single sheet, slid beneath the door. There's an opening at the old print shop on 9th. They're retiring. Small space, good foot traffic. You once said flowers weren't about the petals, they were about second chances. Thought you might want to see it. No signature. But the ink, the fold, the tone, it was him. Anna stared at it for a long time. The flower shop. Her dream. Buried under years of shifts and survival, and now, unearthed, just enough to breathe again. She visited the space that weekend. Small, yes, but full of light. Big windows. A narrow backroom that could hold inventory. Dusty, but nothing a few weekends of work couldn't fix. The for sale sign hung slightly crooked in the window. She didn't decide that day. Didn't rush toward the future like it was a solution. Instead, she stood in the middle of the room and closed her eyes. And she let herself imagine. The smell of soil and stems. The quiet rhythm of arranging something delicate into something beautiful. A life she could call her own. On Monday, she returned to Virion. She didn't mention the shop. Not yet. Mark didn't ask. But later that week, she found a small package on her desk. Inside, gardening gloves, soft green leather. And a single pressed flower. Dried, fragile, but perfectly intact. No note this time. But it didn't need one. He was telling her, "You can begin again." And she was starting to believe it. Anna didn't tell anyone she was meeting with the property owner. She kept it quiet, like something too tender to expose to sunlight. The kind of choice that needed to form in the dark, unpressured, unobserved. The shop had good bones. It needed work, fresh paint, new counters, a deep clean, but it pulsed with potential. The owner, a soft-spoken man named Harold, handed her the keys after their second meeting. "I was hoping it'd go to someone like you," he said. "Someone who actually sees it." Anna didn't know what to say. So she nodded, held the keys in her palm like something sacred, and left. That night, she walked through the empty space again. She took photos, took measurements, but mostly, she listened. To the creak of the floorboards, the soft hum of the street outside, the rhythm of a future unfolding quietly. Then she called Mark. "I signed the lease." There was a pause on the other end. A smile she could hear in the silence. "When?" "Today." "Congratulations," he said. "You didn't need my help to get there." "I didn't," she said softly. "But I wanted you to know." The next morning, she handed in her notice. Carla didn't blink. We'll miss you. But we knew this day would come. Rachel hugged her, said something about launching a side hustle just to order her future floral arrangements. Mark? He didn't speak to her privately. Not at first. Just nodded in meetings, kept things professional. But the night before her last day, she found him on the rooftop balcony, staring out over the city lights. You didn't say goodbye, she said. I wasn't ready to. Anna stood beside him. The air was sharp, but not cold. The kind of crispness that wakes something up inside you. You once said you didn't know who you were becoming, she said. I'm still figuring it out. She looked at him. So am I. He turned then. His voice was quiet. You changed everything for me, Anna. Not with grand gestures. Just by seeing me when I couldn't see myself. You did the same. They didn't talk about what came next. Not about love. Not about labels. Just stood there, watching a city still buzzing, still moving, as if it didn't care who they'd been before. She didn't invite him to the soft opening of the flower shop. But he came anyway. A week after she opened her doors, he appeared just before closing, no press, no entourage. Just Mark. In jeans. Holding a box. Inside, a plaque. Miller and Bloom, EST 2025. Below it, in smaller print, rooted in second chances. She ran her fingers over the engraving. Too much? He asked. No, she whispered. It's perfect. They didn't embrace. Didn't kiss. But he stayed. Helped her sweep up. Watered the violets near the front window. And when he left, she followed him to the door. Will you come again? She asked. He turned back. I never really left. And for the first time in years, Anna believed, not in miracles, not in fairy tales, but in the slow, quiet power of the lives we rebuild when no one's watching. The flower shop opened softly, no balloons, no ribbon cutting, no media splash. Just a wooden sign hanging gently above the door, Miller and Bloom. The name had felt strange at first, like trying on someone else's coat. But in time, it settled on her shoulders like something earned. The first customer was a woman in her 60s, quiet, purposeful. She wanted peonies. Anna didn't have any. It was January. The woman looked disappointed, but then said, You know, my mother used to say a good florist knows how to read between seasons. Anna nodded, disappeared into the cooler, and returned with a bundle of white ranunculus and soft eucalyptus. She wrapped them in brown paper, tied with twine. The woman smiled as she paid. That's exactly what I didn't know I needed, she said. Word spread slowly. A social worker from the women's clinic down the street came in the next week, then a retired teacher, then someone who worked at City Hall. They all said the same thing, the place felt different. Like it wasn't just about flowers. Like it was about care. Anna spent most of her mornings trimming stems and prepping arrangements in the back room. She liked the solitude, the repetition, the quiet beauty of building something with her hands. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Every choice, every display, every scent that filled the small space, all of it carried her imprint. Mark came every Thursday. Never on the dot, never with a schedule. Sometimes in the afternoon. Sometimes 5 minutes before she locked up. He brought books now. Left them on the counter with a quiet, "This reminded me of you." They never talked about the company, about Virion. The part of their lives that once defined everything had quietly faded to the background. One Thursday, he brought her an orchid, delicate, rare, difficult to keep alive. She gave him a look. "Too symbolic?" he asked, half smiling. "No," she said, touching the stem gently. "Just right." There were no declarations. No promises. Just the slow deepening of something neither of them named, something built like the shop itself, layer by layer, intention by intention. But life, as it always does, doesn't freeze for beauty. In March, Anna's landlord stopped by. He wanted to raise the rent. The building had drawn attention, he said. A gallery was interested in the unit next door. "The area's changing," he added with a shrug, as if progress were a storm no one could stop. Anna smiled politely. But that night, she stayed late, looking at spreadsheets, biting her lip. Mark noticed the change, the way she moved through the shop with more urgency, the way her hands fidgeted when she thought no one was watching. "Tell me," he said one evening. She resisted at first. But he waited. "As always. He's raising the rent," she finally admitted. "I can handle it, just not yet. Not until summer, when the events pick up. You want help?" "No," she said immediately. "I want to do this on my own." He didn't push. Just nodded. "I'll be fine," she added, almost defensively. "I know," he said. But that weekend, a customer came in, a couple planning a wedding. They wanted a consultation. They'd heard Anna specialized in small stories. That was how they put it. "We don't want an Instagram wedding," the bride said. "We want someone who listens." Anna listened. They booked. Then another couple came. Then a gallery. Then a community group wanting arrangements for a memorial. And the orders kept coming. By June, she had hired her first assistant, a college student with paint-stained fingers and a warm laugh. The shop felt alive, full, a living organism of intention and joy. Mark still came on Thursdays. But now he stayed longer. Folded delivery boxes. Wiped down counters. One night, he came after closing with 2 glasses of wine in a paper bag. They sat behind the counter. No music. Just the hum of the fridge, the scent of lavender and bergamot lingering in the air. "You made this," he said, raising his glass. "So did you," she replied. He shook his head. "I gave you a door. You built the world behind it." She thought about that for a moment. Then looked at him, really looked at him. "I used to think love was about being rescued," she said. "But it's not. It's about building something with someone who knows how to stay when things get quiet." Mark said nothing. Just set down his glass. And this time, when he leaned in, she didn't turn away. The kiss was simple. Unhurried. Like everything else between them, not a spark, but an ember. The kind that stays warm long after the fire dies down. That night, as he walked her to the door, Anna paused. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "The bench. The blood. What might have happened if I had walked past? I think about it every day. I never saw you coming," she whispered. "Neither did I," he replied. And as she stood in the threshold of her own shop, the lights off, the world silent beyond the windows, Anna felt a stillness she didn't fear anymore. This wasn't a fairy tale. There were no carriages, no glass slippers, no castles. Just a girl who once waited tables, who dreamed of flowers, who gave a stranger a bed without asking his past. Just a man who lost everything, who found shelter not in hiding, but in being seen. And together, without meaning to, they had chosen each other. Not once. But again. And again. And again.